I'm out here in the hayfield today, and the main goal is to get all of these weeds mowed down out here. I don't know what this stuff is. I mean, it looks like mustard down at ground level, but up here it looks different, so I don't know. I don't really care what it is, I just know I need it gone. Once this stuff is all chopped up and laying on the ground, this ground will disc so much better. It'll float better. It'll just do everything better. And the other thing that I would like to do out here after I get this stuff mowed is come through and spray everything that's starting to come up after that rain we had the other day. You can see we've got a multitude here of broadleaf and grasses here. This is actually probably volunteer hay from last year, but a lot of what those grass shoots that you see is wild oats, which is a big problem that I've had out in this field. This year I have the opportunity to come out here and spray this now before I do my groundwork, and that'll probably be the most effective way to get rid of the wild oats without hurting my target crop. I've got the LS and a 12-foot flail mower, so I don't think this will take all that long, and I'm not really sure what the rest of the day will bring, but I know that's what we're doing now. That's what's going on today on Farmertylerranch. To happen sooner or later. That's part of my GoPro. Well, that was unfortunate, but you know, I'm kind of surprised it actually hasn't happened multiple times by now. That's the first camera that I've really destroyed while making a video. I've been close several times, but this is the first one that's actually ended up in pieces. Funny enough, I think I found all the parts of the camera. The battery actually looks fine. I think the battery can be used again, which kind of does make sense because it is on, you know, the interior of the camera. And then I did find the card, which also appears to be fine. We'll see if I can pull footage off of it. I guess you guys already know. It looks okay, so we'll try it. Bummer. Well, that job is done now. Things look a lot better out here, and this will be ready to spray when I'm ready to do it. Last year I was talking about maybe trying a new method of planting the field, in which I just come out here and mow the weeds down, wait to get some moisture on the ground, spread the seed and fertilizer, and then harrow it right in. In other words, no disking, no floating, none of that major tillage that I've done in years past. That is still something that's on my mind, but I'm not willing to just, you know, go all in on it in this year. But I think what I will likely do is leave a little strip where I can try that, or a corner or something, where I can just try it out and see if it works. And if it does, that might change the way I do things. But for now, we're done over here. We can check this off the list and move on to the next thing. Well, it's a new day, but same location. I'm back over here at the hayfield in the stand-in work truck. And I got to thinking yesterday while I was out here mowing that it's not going to be long when I'll want to hook up this disc and start turning some ground up. And I know that I've got a flat tire on this thing yet again. If you've been with the channel for a while, you know this has sort of been an ongoing issue with this disc. I think it might just be time to replace the tire. So I'm going to take it off and take it back to the shop and probably go ahead and do that finally. Where did I put this? I don't know yet.
I'm not sure that floor jack is going to go tall enough to lift that disc, so I'm looking for some blocks, which fortunately there are no shortage of around here. A couple of these little 2x4s will probably make the difference. There used to be a guy that kept bees out here, but I haven't seen him in a couple of years. But he left all this stuff behind, so I guess it's free for the taking. I think a floor jack maybe was not the best choice for this, but it's what we've got, so we're gonna make it work. So I only need to get it up just a little bit, but I do need to get it up some. I'm free. See, I think this is a problem here. I've got like 2 or 3 plugs in this hole, and it just doesn't hold air anymore. So yeah, probably just need to replace the tire, but you know how I am. I might patch it again. I mean, if I can have 10 patches in a water trough, why not in a tire also? Listen to all the dirt in there. Wheel bearing still feels good. A little loose, but not bad. I'm sure I touched on this some yesterday, and that's the thing when I film over a couple of days. Sometimes I forget what I've already talked about, but you can see all the green coming up out here in the hayfield, and I'd be willing to bet that that is the vast majority of what you're seeing popping up is wild oats, which is the species that we do not want out here. And the reason that I'm pretty sure this is all wild oats that we're looking at is because I planted, or have planted, triticale on this 20 acres for the last several years, and triticale does not make a viable seed head. In other words, it's pretty rare to see it replant itself. Triticale is a wheat rye hybrid, and like I said, it's not supposed to make a viable seed head, but I'm pretty sure I have seen it do it in rare cases. It definitely doesn't replant itself like, say, oats or ryegrass or something like that. You might see a couple little volunteer sprouters, but nothing, not like what we're seeing here. So if it's not volunteer triticale coming back up, then it would suggest to me that it's almost certainly wild oats, and where I see the majority of this green is in the places where I know the wild oats are bad. So I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking at. It's really difficult to control wild oats in a field where I am trying to grow other grass species. In other words, most anything that kills wild oats is also going to kill the things that I'm trying to grow, because they're all grasses. There are exceptions. I've tried a chemical called Simplicity in years past, which will target wild oats and ryegrass and several other things. And I've had some success with that, but the big problem with spraying Simplicity is that you're spraying the oats after they've already sprouted, and a lot of times what happens is, like right here where you see a pretty dark green streak behind me, well, the oats completely occupy and take over this spot in the field. So if I come back and spray them out and kill them after they're already established, what I end up with is a bunch of blank spots out here because the oats have crowded out everything that I tried to plant. That is why I want to try to kill these oats before I plant anything, so that my triticale seed actually has a chance to occupy all this square footage and not get crowded out by the wild oats. The thing that does concern me though is that as I'm walking around out here looking at things, I can see a lot of seed sitting on the ground, and I'm just assuming that this is most likely wild oat seed. So it'll probably be difficult to see on the GoPro, but like there's a seed, there's a seed. You know, they're all over out here. And they probably haven't germinated yet because I've not yet disked this ground. And my worry is that I'm gonna come in here, spray all this stuff, and then disc the ground, and then all of those seeds that I'm seeing laying on top right now are gonna end up sprouting. So now I'm feeling like maybe I would have been better off to disc this, let everything germinate, and then spray it, but originally I was not wanting to do that because right now the field is like pretty smooth and it'll be really nice to spray. If I was to go through and disc and then try to spray after that, the sprayer gets bouncing, which means the boom gets bouncing up and down, and you know, you just kind of tear things apart. And I don't think the spray job is as good because that boom is not holding at a steady height the whole time. So I'm not really sure how this is going to work. It may not be as good as I hope, but I think it's got to be better than doing nothing. But I guess if this ends up not working out as well as I hope, then I'll know why, and I'll know what to do differently next year. Well, it's a cloudy day. There's a chance of showers this afternoon and rain in a couple days. So what I'm saying is there's really no point for me to keep this concrete covered any longer. So I think what I need to do today is just get everything cleaned up and moved out of here, get the water trough put back together so that all I've got to do is turn that water on and open a gate when I want to let cattle come in here. The concrete portion of this job is done at last, and you know, this is not the prettiest slab, but I feel like I did learn a lot pouring it, and you know, that's kind of for me what it's all about, is just to keep adding to that knowledge bank. The pour on this end came out perfect. A yard was like the exact amount that fit in that form, and it was the first one that we did, so I figured that things were going to be good. The second pour was this one that I refer to as Nevada for obvious reasons, and the form for Nevada I thought was exactly the same as the form for the first pour, but we ended up being way short on concrete for this one. I think I ended up adding another 6 or 7 60-pound bags to this. So it's definitely not as nice of a pour, just because I was kind of frantic trying to figure out what I was going to do when I realized how short my yard was. So when I got down to the third and final pour, while they were filling up the buggy, I told the guy if there's any way he could put a little extra in there, I would appreciate it, because I certainly didn't want this one to come out short. And he did. And as you might imagine, we ended up with way too much concrete for this form, which was fine because I just added the excess here on the side of Nevada, and this actually filled in what was a pretty big hole and what would have been a pretty big step up onto the slab for the cows. We'll call this little unplanned pour here Lake Tahoe. Look at a map, you'll get it. The last thing that I want to do for the groundwork out here before winter sets in is drag a bunch of these wood chips and dirt and gravel up against the concrete so that we don't have this defined edge here. It would be nice if, you know, the concrete and the ground level were roughly the same. And then lastly, just to kind of share the vision with you guys, in case, you know, I always wonder what I see in my head, am I conveying that well to you guys? Do you even know what I'm doing half the time? But the plan is to double the length of this feeder, so bring it out another 12 feet so that it ends about right here. By doing that, I'll add an additional 16 slots, which means instead of having 21 spots for cattle to eat, we will now have 37. A lot of people have asked me why go through all the trouble to do this. You know, things were working fine up to this point. and that is true. But I noticed that last year, after I weaned the calves, I was still having to feed the cattle out in the field because I hadn't yet taken them over to the winter pasture. And during that time of the year, we got a bunch of rain, and they ended up just kind of destroying this corner of the field. And during that time, I thought, man, it would be nice if I could get everybody to fit up at that feeder so that I didn't have to feed them out in the field when it's so wet like that. I do have a shut-off valve here, but I've noticed that it drips pretty regularly, so the C-clamp is a good way to keep water out for now. Last but not least, the float guard. Now don't worry, I don't plan on putting rolling hay out in every single video from here on out, even though that has kind of been what I've been doing. But the first bale I rolled out, it was a pasture bale, and I tried to roll it backwards and it just took forever. The second bale I rolled out was a forage bale. I rolled it front ways and it rolled out way too fast. So in this video, I thought I would take a forage bale and roll it out backwards, and that should work out just about the way that I want it to. Now unfortunately, you're only going to get one angle on this roll because, well, you know why. Guess you guys are ready. Why do you guys do that? This is a lot more what I had in mind. By rolling the bale backwards, it goes all the way down the length of the pasture, and I actually have to turn around and come back a little bit to get the rest of it unrolled. My plan with rolling these bales is to start and get through all the paddocks that I hayed to try to put some nutrients back in the ground, and then if there's still time, I'll probably just go over those again or just start putting the hay where it's more convenient. I don't know. I think by the time I get over everything that I took hay off of, that will probably be closer to the wet season and maybe thinking more about feeding up in feeders rather than out here in the field. This bale that I put out today is triticale. When I start getting into the three-way bales or the forage mix bales, I'll probably want to roll those out in the back pasture, because those will actually reseed themselves and start growing. And I'm hoping that if I roll out enough bales in close proximity to each other, that in the springtime I might be able to get out there with the disc mower and get a little bonus cutting of hay. But I guess for now we'll let them eat. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.